What's good, YouTube? Masex back with another video, and we are back with the positional rankings. Last video we looked at the big board overall. Now we're getting more specific, and if you're an OG, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is the 2.0 version of the positional rankings. As you see in the title, we're looking at wide receivers right now, and this is the final projection ranking before the NFL draft here in a few weeks in late April. And if you're new to the channel, definitely hit the like and subscribe button. Join the family, as we're going to be taking a look at every position, the top rankings that I have projecting forward into the NFL for the 2026 class. As I said in the last video, these are my own rankings based off of what I value projecting forward into the future. The list is going to look a little bit different than the consensus and what you're going to typically find. I'm not afraid to have someone much lower or much higher than what everybody else is saying, and definitely voice your opinions in the comment section below. I love a good debate. And with that said, we're just going to go straight to the top 5. And with that said, I've talked long enough. I'm ready to just get right to the players. So without further ado, let's get to it. All right, and at number 5, we got Denzel Boston out of Washington, a redshirt junior at the combine, measured in at 6'4", 212 pounds. Pro Football Focus gave him a really good grade of 88.0. And Denzel Boston is your outside X receiver. 80% of his snaps were out wide. I estimate he runs about a 4.52, 4.55. And with that prototypical outside receiver size, teams are going to view him as a classic boundary target in the NFL. Last year in 2025, 62 catches, 881 yards, 11 scores, 14 yards per catch. Very solid numbers. Didn't play with an elite quarterback. He's a big-bodied outside receiver with a large catch radius and strong ball skills. He wins primarily through physicality and body positioning rather than pure speed. Now, when I look at him on film, he consistently shows the ability to high point the ball and win contested catches, making him a particularly dangerous threat in the red zone. And I think early on, I think he can find good money in the red zone, more specifically if he's tied to a really good quarterback. Last year in college had a 70% contested catch rate, which is elite. In my opinion, anything over 50% is what you want to look at for somebody that's really good at contested catches. Now, Washington frequently used him on the boundary fades, back shoulder throws, and intermediate routes, where he's able to use that big frame as an advantage. Now, despite not being a burner, like I said, he looks like a mid 4.5 guy. He does move well for a receiver his size. He's about 215 pounds at 6'4". I do feel that he is one of the best, if not the best, contested catch receiver in the class. Now, I do want to see him separate against top man coverage a lot better. It was pretty inconsistent in college. Route tree still developing. He's going to need more polish and release packages, especially if he's going to get through that elite man coverage that he's going to see in the NFL. But 11 touchdowns, strong red zone efficiency, first downs and touchdowns is what gets wide receivers paid. He has first round upside depending on team fit, and there are going to be some NFL teams that value that size, and he may be able to sneak into the first round as a day one pick. Stylistically, I see him like Mike Williams, Michael Pittman Jr., Courtland Sutton, big outside receivers who win through size, body control, and contested catches. All right, we're moving up to number 4, and I may have a shocker for a lot of you guys, but I got Carnell Tate out of Ohio State, true junior, listed at 6'2", 192 pounds, ran a 4.53 at the 40-yard dash in Indianapolis. And I'm a little bit lower on Tate, admittedly, but I still think that he's a good NFL prospect. He has the length of a traditional outside receiver, though not as big as he was listed on Ohio State's database, but he does have good arm length, large hands at over 10 inches, which makes sense why he has such an expanded catch radius, and that's going to allow quarterbacks to place throws in tight windows. Last year, 51 catches, 875 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 17.2 yards per catch. So Ohio State used Tate primarily as a boundary receiver. Almost 90% of his routes was on the outside. He was targeted more on vertical routes, deep outs, and intermediate timing patterns. Tate is one of the most polished route runners amongst receivers in the 26 2026 class. His game's built more on precision, body control, and advanced understanding of leverage against defensive backs. He consistently manipulated defenders, watching film, excellent route tempo changes and head fakes, creates separation without relying on elite speed, which even before the 4.52, 4.53, I knew he wasn't a burner, and that's perfectly fine. At the catch point, he displays excellent ball skills, concentration. I mean, there was a lot of highlights that you could point to even last year where he made some crazy catches. He adjusts to off-target throws, and I love how he maintained possession through contact. His ability to track the ball downfield and maintain balance along the sideline does make him particularly dangerous on boundary routes. While he does lack elite long speed, Carnell Tate's technical proficiency allows him to consistently win in the intermediate passing game. Now, I do have concerns though with the average speed at the NFL level, primarily boundary X receiver, and even in college he just didn't have enough consistent deep threat separation, which I feel he got away with that a lot in college. He can also with his frame, and like I said, he's actually smaller than what he was listed at 6'2", not 6'3", 6'4". It showed on tape. He struggled a lot against physical press coverage. I also think that we're propping him up due to him being at Ohio State, more specifically a wide receiver at Ohio State. Now don't get me wrong, I still have him as a top 4 wide receiver. I fully expect him to be a day 1 pick. I do think that his ceiling is more of a wide receiver too. Some player comps that I have is Terry McLaurin and Calvin Ridley, but I'm just honestly not as high on Carnell Tate as most people. But I still have him in my top 4. Let's not trip. All right, we're moving into the top 3. And at number 3, I got Chris Brazell II out of Tennessee, listed at 6'4", 198 pounds at the combine. Crazy wingspan at over 80 inches, 79.4 PFF grade. The redshirt junior is just really intriguing to me. Brazell projects as a prototypical outside X receiver. 94% of his snaps were on the outside boundaries. But at 6'4", 200 pounds and running a 4.37, Brazell possesses one of the more rare physical profiles amongst receivers in this class. Elite height combined with crazy vertical speed. It also translates on tape. 62 catches, over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, and over 16 yards per catch. Brazell generated consistent explosive plays in Tennessee's offense, and that's what caught my eye. Even when I made my first rankings, I was a little bit higher on Brazell. It's in the realm of possibility that he's a day 1 pick. Some teams going to fall in love with that size profile, those traits. And teams look for traits at the NFL level. That's value in the NFL. Maybe not necessarily for fantasy football, but there's a lot of value to that. Back shoulder throws, red zone fades. That's his game, in addition to being able to separate compared to like a Denzel Boston. Route running remains a work in progress, but I fully expect him to develop. You just don't find that rare size speed combination. Just doesn't fall off trees. Very limited at Tennessee, but I think I say that every year with a wide receiver that comes out of Tennessee. Also needs to improve release technique against press coverage, but he was one of the most explosive wide receivers in the class. Very well can be a top 25 pick. I really see a team moving up, falls in love with him, and understands that this guy has a rare ceiling that could really strike gold. I think his ceiling projection for me is Mike Williams with the vertical contested catch ability, but also he's got some George Pickens in him if he continues to develop, but he's definitely one of the more intriguing prospects in this class. All right, now we're in my top 2, and at number 2, I got Makai Lemon out of USC, a true junior listed at the combine at 5'11", 192 pounds. Pro Football Focus gave him a score best on this list of 90.8, an elite grade by Pro Football Focus. Last year, 79 catches, 1,156 yards, 11 touchdowns, 14.6 yards per catch. Lemon was USC's primary offensive playmaker, and he was one of the most productive receivers in the entire class. He's a target monster. Primarily slot wide receiver. You're going to see the Amon-Ra St. Browns. You think about the school, know, they're both light skinned, and they play primarily in the slot. 70% of his snaps were in the slot, but Lemon is one of the most dynamic receivers after the catch in this class. 6th among receivers in missed tackles forced, 8th in yards per route run with 3.13, 66.7% contested catch. All this is according to PFF. He has all the traits of being an elite slot receiver, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I feel he has more juice, though not as physically strong or as thick as Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, his burst allows him to separate immediately at the line of scrimmage, creates a lot of explosive plays in space. Looking at the film, USC frequently used him in motion. They used him in screens, slot alignments to really maximize his ability to generate yards after catch. Now, despite his smaller frame, Lemon competes well through contact, and I would definitely say he has reliable hands in traffic. I would say that he has a very limited catch radius. He's smaller frame, and he is limited pretty much to a slot-only receiver at the next level. Press coverage can disrupt his release, but he's the type of guy, he has his strengths, he has his weaknesses. It's up to the coordinator to put him in positions to let him utilize his strengths. The cliche comparison with Amon-Ra St. Brown, where he went to a system where they strictly utilize his strengths, and he's one of the best wide receivers in the game. I think Mekhi Lemon is definitely a wide receiver that does that. But outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown, I also compare him to a Jaden Reed with his explosiveness, and Christian Kirk with his run after catch ability. Is definitely going to be a target hog in the right system, and if you play fantasy football, when he gets in his ceiling, he's going to be one of the top receivers you're going to want on your team as well. Just wanted to throw that in there. And my number one wide receiver is Jordan Tyson. That's right, Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State, listed at 6'2", 203 pounds. Tyson has the physical traits of a classic outside wide receiver with good length, play strength, and he has positional versatility. Truly think at the next level he can be an X, a Z, and play in the slot. PFF gave him a grade of 82.9, and with that versatility, he's still going to be, I feel, an X wide receiver. In college, about 75% of his snaps were on the boundaries, and he's a physical receiver whose game is built around body positioning, ball tracking, and contested catch ability. Tyson consistently used his frame to shield defenders and create throwing windows for quarterbacks. While he lacks what I'd say elite burst off a line, I still feel Tyson compensates with strong hands and the ability to win through contact at the catch point. His development as a route runner will ultimately determine his ceiling at the next level. He does have a lot of medical concerns coming into the NFL, and that may scare away a lot of teams. Of course, under the assumption that he stays healthy, he is the best wide receiver from this class. Now, I do have some concerns with his yards per catch, right under 12, which suggests heavy usage in intermediate routes rather than deep vertical route concepts. I'm not sure if that was a combination of playing through injuries and the scheme at Arizona State. That's not what you want to see in a top wide receiver prospect, but there's a lot of context that went into his career in college. But looking at him on film, I really think that if he can stay healthy and limit wasted movements and routes, I think we have a potential all-pro wide receiver who, in the rare case, I'll admit, will have a better NFL career than he will a college career. Like, I feel his ceiling is more like Drake London with his contested catch style, but his median projection to me gives me Michael Pittman Jr. vibes. He's a physical possession receiver at the next level with the right quarterback. I really feel that Jordan Tyson, perennial Pro Bowl type of wide receiver at the next level. All right, there you have it. These are my top 5 wide receivers for the 2026 class. If you made it this far in the video, I deeply appreciate it. Definitely comment your opinions below. These are my projections looking into the future. I appreciate you guys watching. Be on the lookout for the next positional video coming out here soon. Can't wait for the NFL draft. If you clicked on this video, more likely you're an NFL draft junkie as well. Hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you on the next video.